Time is ticking quickly at the Woody Hayes Athletic Center, and there's a lot to talk about and a lot of takeaways on a Tuesday for the Podcast Daily. 8 practices in the books. That is Bill Landis, Jeremy Birmingham. I am Austin Ward. Buckeyes will be back at it for number 9 today, which again is going to be Tuesday. But we heard from Ryan Day on Monday and learned a lot, Bill. Where should we begin?
I want your help in deciphering his feelings on the quarterbacks.
Okay.
Because he said, like, sometimes scouts will, like in the NFL, scouts would intentionally like downplay what they feel about somebody in an effort to not tip their hand. And then he kind of did the same thing. So does that mean he likes what he's seen, or that they actually have been just like fine, but maybe not great?
So what does mixed bag to the negative mean?
Yeah.
It means exactly what I think we could all reasonably assume, that there is a lot of potential. And there was he started dancing around with some evaluations of other positions, and he says, when somebody flashes, that means the consistency is not there. And I don't think there is any reasonable expectation that Julian Say and Lincoln Kienholz, or certainly Tavian Sinclair, could be at that point after 2 weeks of spring camp. I think they like pieces from all 3 of them. But the reason why, and this doesn't just apply for 2025, I think other years as well, that you don't hear somebody named a starting quarterback, is that when you get tagged with that designation at Ohio State, it needs to mean something, and it needs to be permanent. And I don't think that any of them are at that point right now to the level that Ryan Day would want. Is there some level of desperation to mix bag to the negative? I would say definitely not. The fact that you don't just say it's purely negative is encouraging. I think there's a lot to build on, but not nearly enough for Ryan Day to be like, yep, ready to go play Texas today with one of those 3 guys.
Yeah, okay. Because that's how I took it too, which I think, again, like is probably normal. At least it's normal for here. I can't speak for the way other programs handle their quarterback competitions, but it does seem like more often than not in spring, Ryan Day like kind of says the same thing. I think part of that is like they don't like hold their hand in the spring. He said like Matt Patricia's thrown a lot at these guys, and I think they want it that way because there's like a sink or swim element to that, I guess. But if you don't swim necessarily, that's not the worst thing in the world, as long as you like learn from the experience. So I think they're still very much in that mode.
Well, that's what they do with babies now. They just throw them in there.
I know, it scares the crap out of you when you see it for the first time. So I think quarterback's fine. Like I guess like it's not. I don't think there's anything to be alarmed about. Is a good way to put it. Like
he said exactly what we thought.
Have they been blowing people's doors off? Maybe not, but it could be worse.
But I think he did it in a pretty detailed way.
I mean, we'll talk about this in a minute, but like, I think that he said pretty much what we thought. Like they've had their moments, and then they have 3 plays in a row where you want to choke them. And
well, I don't know if that's what he said.
He didn't say that, but I could see it in his face. And then he said, we're going to need all 3 of these guys.
Yeah.
And I don't know that you're going to need all 3 of them this season. I think that's
you're going to need all 3 of them to not transfer after a spring football.
I think that a lot of that is, it's not politicking per se, but it is understanding the situation that Julian saying maybe the guy we all think is going to be the quarterback, but he hasn't earned it yet. He hasn't won that job. And as Ryan Day was talking about, Will Howard comes in and played a lot of football. He said 6'5". So like I think he's indicating like these guys are tiny compared to Will. And so like Will Howard I think changed a lot of what Ryan Day is expecting his quarterback to become in spring, which is an unfair expectation because Will Howard had started a lot of football games but
even he had bad spring. Or not a bad spring, went up and down spring.
He held himself like the starting quarterback.
Yeah,
and I don't think that these guys are in that mindset yet, but a lot of it is, hey, you cannot afford to lose one of them over these next 2 weeks either. Like that is so I think you have to keep them engaged. I liked what he talked about, telling them after practice they're going to watch it individually, they're going to take notes, they're going to go to Billy Fessler with it, and then they're going to review it tomorrow. Like I thought the most impressive thing to me about what Ryan Day does, and I'm sure other coaches do it, but I sit in Ryan Day's press conferences, not other coaches. He has no idea what people are going to ask him, and there's never like stammering or stopping or like hum. Like he is really, really prepared to talk about his football team. And again, I don't know if it's because he just won a national championship and he is just a much different person, but he opened up his press conference on Monday talking about a concert in the Woody. And basically begging for money for people.
It's not begging. That's what you get in exchange. North to Nashville is going to be right over there.
I just think that what you're seeing from him, he went has he ever been that detailed talking about the rest of the roster, like position by position, without really being asked? He was asked what players are standing out, and then he went every group and talked about every setup, basically.
Yeah, I think last year he was doing that more once he took the step back and spent some time in the defensive meeting rooms and trying to be the CEO. So I think that's been a gradual process. I don't know that it's directly in response to the national championship. I think that's been coming for a while, but it's not nothing. And I do think it helps, though, to talk about other coaches in their press conferences, is that this beat cares a lot about football. And if the head coach doesn't know his entire roster, that would be a problem. There's not a lot of like, hey, let's talk about
dinosaurs.
What happened in the playoff? Oh, Florida State's basketball team. You're not getting a lot of that stuff when you're in the Woody and you're in spring practice.
Nobody's asking him about Jake Diebler's success or lack thereof at this point.
Or water main breaks, or things that don't have anything to do with football. So if he's not prepared to talk about his roster, that would be a red flag. Now, I think you're right. As he's gone through 6 years of this, and as he adjusted his responsibilities, I think he is better at it now, and certainly more detailed about the defense than he was 2 years ago. But I think it's been trending that way for a while, and it's great. I think that's how it should be. And if you're going to manage, because you talked about the quarterback situation and getting through April, that's true at every spot. If Ryan Day does not have relationships with as many players as possible, and it becomes purely about NIL for Ohio State, that's not a spot that the roster and the program needs to be in. So I think he's done a really impressive job of that.
I think he did a great job on Monday of trying to lower the temperature around quarterback conversation. I don't think he helped I think a lot of people who watch the podcast are probably sick of us talking about CJ Hicks. And
today didn't help.
I know, that's what I'm saying. When he brings up CJ, first thing that he mentions when asked about players standing out, he brings up CJ Hicks. And then he was talking about the reason players come to Ohio State, and the first thing he said is, "Can you stop CJ off the edge?" That is...
Yeah, that was interesting.
It is an interesting discussion. And again, we talked on Monday morning, and one of the things I was saying is there a role for CJ Hicks beyond just that, specific task? And maybe it doesn't matter if there is.
It seemed like if you can parse a couple of different things together, or patch a couple of different things together, that maybe the pass rusher on this roster they feel the best. I'm not talking pure pass rush stuff, not holistic defensive line play, just getting after it, is CJ. And then maybe he's looking for more from the rest of them, to the point where he kind of
didn't mention Kenyatta Jackson or Cade.
Well, he said he
eventually got there.
He mentioned the whole defensive line group, and he likes what they're doing. And he said we have a pretty good pass rush right now, but we'll have to continue to evaluate it to see if we have enough. So it's on one hand, he's, I think, being fairly praising of CJ Hicks, while on the other, opening the door a little bit to if there's pass rush help in the portal after spring practice, maybe we'll take a look.
I think that was we could make a top three. The Will Howard 6'5" thing, as it applies to Julian Sain and Lincoln Kienholz getting through the year, is up in that top three. And maybe the actual number one is not closing the door on needing not just defensive tackle help in the transfer portal, but defensive end help.
Yeah, I'm not sure where you get it. I don't know
He's
either.
a young man who just left Stanford who's pretty good.
I know who you're talking about, David Bailey.
Saddle up, baby.
I don't think that he...
Get your tickets now. It's $250. It's 4 hours of concert.
At the risk of deep diving into personnel talk, we can disagree on this. David Bailey is no different to me than CJ Hicks. So maybe
we definitely disagree on that.
Maybe to your point, if you have multiple CJ Hickses, that's better. But I don't think that David Bailey, yes, he's played a lot in that role, and so he's got tape. I don't think that the people who matter don't see his upside any different than CJ Hicks. So now, again, the question is there a room for more of those guys? Certainly, if you're building a new position, if you're trying to implement a way to use edge rushers in a different style than Ohio State's done, why would you not stack those dudes, especially if Josh Mickens is out as he has been throughout spring, right? So it is interesting, but I don't think that's the guy that they're...
Count me as someone who disagrees that you already got David Bailey at home. I don't think that's a situation
I'm just saying,
Ohio State's in.
I'm just telling you what's floating in the ether.
You can just say he's too expensive.
I don't even know that's it. That's not the problem as far as I've been.
We've only been around Matt Patricia for like 6 weeks. If that's not someone that he could use, I would be floored by that.
I'm not
Again, it's
saying,
it's not up to us. It's not our decision.
Yeah. But anyway.
But the part about maybe we have overdone it with the CJ Hicks conversation, although I do think that Ryan Day stoked the fires a little bit more on that. You know, when I talked to CJ after he did his post-practice stuff with Matt Patricia last week, and it's like all of their conversations are about learning how to defend the run differently. So that shouldn't be a surprise. That's what Larry Johnson is going to demand if you're part of that group and you're in the rushman, that getting on the field is going to be reliant on that, because I think all the rest is already known for Ohio State. They know he can rush the passer. They know he can blitz. They know that his speed and his power are going to beat a lot of tackles and get to the quarterback a lot of times in the role that they're asking him to play. But I think more than anything else, that has been the challenge for these 4 weeks now that Ohio State's halfway through. And he can tackle too. He played linebacker. It's not like he doesn't have the physical skills to do that. So becoming a more complete defensive end is obviously critical. But I don't think that they would, Ryan Day specifically, I don't think he would be talking about him multiple times unprompted if there wasn't something actually happening there.
No, I agree. I mean, they clearly see something that makes the light bulb go over the head. You know?
Yeah.
And I thought that he talking about the defensive tackle, he didn't mention really those guys by name, but said we need them to step up. And so that continues to be one of those areas where, like, man, I don't know who's there.
Yeah, it's. I think this is that really key stretch, because the one thing we've said about it is Tywone Malone, Jason Moore, Will Smith, if they tap into their full potential, you could be in a really good spot if you're Ohio State, but still that's a group of 5, and that plays into the other conversation that we have about 16 or 17 games, that would be pretty taxing on them and probably not the spot that they want to be in. And that's like the best case scenario, right? And I don't know that they're at that point. This week is really the last time that you're going full bore in a camp, because once you get to week 4, you're cleaning things up a little bit. You're getting to the finish line. The spring, Ryan Day's still saying that he wants to have a spring game. It's like he's trying to speak it into existence, knowing that it's not going to happen in a format that people would really recognize.
Buy your tickets, though.
But go hang out and then come to Saddle Up.
The whole point of the spring game is to just show up and support the team. It's not to watch good football.
100%.
Yeah, mostly.
Like so I think not to put too much stock into 1 week, but this is the last like really critical full contact, full intensity week for Ohio State to evaluate, and that now includes defensive end as well as defensive tackle. What can those guys prove by the time they get done on Saturday, which that's probably not the one. I bet Thursday is the day that everyone has circled in the Woody, but what's it look like?
Maybe it's not full intensity, though, because he said, like, on Monday that some of the full intensity last week got too intense.
They were getting after it last
and
week.
I took that as there were fights.
It sounded, to use the Ryan Day to English dictionary, that means fights.
Yeah, there were fights.
I love that.
It's great. He seemed to like it too. It was like no one got hurt. No one broke their hand punching a helmet, as far as I know. So as long as that doesn't happen, then yeah, I think it's good. Like he said, the team has an edge about it, which I don't know is true of like every team when you're practicing in March still, especially a team that is feeling all fat and happy coming off of a national title. So I think the fact that there are jobs up for grabs, that there is an infusion of youth / like guys who've been biding their time, even if they're a little older, kind of rising up now and some bigger opportunities, has created a pretty competitive air out here during these practices. Because I think like he sort of like walked a line with the quarterbacks to like not give away too much. But other than that, I feel like the vibes he's been giving off Ryan Day have been like, I feel pretty good about what I've seen on the field from just about every other position group, especially when like Caleb Downs isn't doing a whole lot. I'd imagine Jeremiah Smith isn't doing a whole lot. And even with those guys being out or like half out, he likes the energy and he likes the competitive spirit of it.
I'm sure it's just a coincidence that at the same time Ryan Day is talking about maybe pulling the guys back a little bit and walking to the edge, that he's also saying just after that you feel Jermaine Matthews out there every single day. Those are surely not related.
I actually think, and this is just a thought that's coming to my head right now that we haven't really posited before, there's a lot of guys who return on this team that have played a lot of football, but it's what you said, like not a lot of them are like starters, right? Mm-hmm. And I think it's actually a really unique opportunity for a team coming off a national championship to have pissed off players and guys who have something to prove. Like,
we know what it looks like when you have a team won a title when everyone comes back with nothing to prove.
yeah, I mean, I think I think it's actually a really
There's not a banner next to.
Yeah.
Yeah, where's the
gap
2015 banner?
Right.
I think it's actually really interesting to think about it that way, because I have not really considered that. Yeah, you return only 8 starters out of 22, but you have a lot of guys who are veterans trying to win those jobs for the first time. So even guys like Caden Curry, who I know I don't know he's one of the guys out here getting in fights, but I bet you he is.
I bet he's in a mix.
Because he's just one of those guys, and he's an emotion bringer. He's the guy telling people to tear down.
He's fighting the equipment staff.
He's the one telling people to tear down signs and stuff. So I think it's an interesting look into what this team, and I felt, and you guys can tell me if you think I'm wrong or not, but I thought that Ryan Day on Monday was as like intense as he's been in a while. Like, as far as just like dialed in.
I think he's pretty intense a lot of time. I do agree, dialed in, and the description of the entire roster. The way I don't know if that boils over to the level of intensity, because sometimes that meter he has like broken off of his car before, and it's not been good for him.
I think maybe he just has a pretty good handle on where things are and where they need to go, and that comes out as like intense confidence.
He's not like, he didn't make jokes. You know what I mean? Like, we've seen him throughout the, like, even when he said, like, it depends on what type of weekend you want to have. Like, it wasn't like he said that type of stuff before.
Well, he definitely meant it.
Where he's laughing, right? And I don't think he was laughing about it. Like,
we were, but he wasn't.
Yeah, so I just think there was something different. I like it. I mean, I think for a team, as you said, like, coming off of a championship, they had an opportunity to be complacent, and that is not happening.
Yeah, I don't get that sense for them at all. Anything else on a Tuesday takeaway for you, Bill?
Offensive line specific, they want primary and secondary positions for all the offensive linemen except for Ethan Onyanwa, who he said is only playing tackle.
Which he did not seem entirely satisfied with the offensive tackle play.
He was pretty critical, I thought, of the tackles.
Yeah, but I expect that. That could be reflective of poor play. I think maybe it's more reflective of the guys on the interior are good and have like put in the work here, and the tackles are new and haven't, so they got to make them earn it a little more.
And CJ Hicks is out there.
And then got to block CJ Hicks off the edge, who apparently is
And
Lawrence
Arvell
Taylor.
Reese.
Yeah. And Arvell Reese, who continues to draw rave reviews.
You?
I mean, was I the person who predicted Arvell Reese is going to be a Butkus finalist and Sonny's not at the end of this year? I did that a couple weeks ago, right?
You did.
I just want to make sure that I
Don't you do that every year?
No,
You take the guy who's the obvious
You
one
know
and say
what?
he's not going to win it, and then the guy who plays next one's going to win it. Did you do it with Sonny and Cody?
Was I wrong?
You should have been.
But I wasn't. I just think that there's something happening here. And what it
is not exactly clear.
Just stay tuned next year when you pick Peyton Pierce to win the Buckeyes instead of Arvell
I
Reese.
mean, I would. He's a dark horse for this season. You hear the way people talk about him? My
I hear the
goodness.
way you talk about him.
I love that kid. And he's letting his hair grow, which is not like my thing. Like, I'm judging people based on how long they're letting their hair get on the football field.
I'm not sure that's mixed bag to the negative in terms of evaluations.
Well, have you seen all of, like, when we were out here for Pro Day, all the guys that left the program, they all cut their hair. They all like.
So they got traded away from the Yankees.
Yeah, it's like they all of a sudden were like, okay, now I'm going to get rid of my dreads. And the guys who were on the team are like, time to let it loose.
Uh-huh.
It's an interesting juxtaposition. The guys who were getting ready for the NFL are like, okay, time to dial it in and get serious. And I didn't even recognize Jordan Hancock. And I've known the kid for 6 years.
Yeah. I miss his hair.
Makes you faster, more aerodynamic when you're getting timed.
Well,
It makes perfect sense.
and it worked because, holy cow, his testing numbers were insane on Wednesday. Made himself a lot of money.
Okay, sorry for that.
You gave another takeaway, and it was about Arvell Reese being good and
He's
hair.
so good. He's going to be really good. And so just be advised.
And I think like moving around too, the more we hear about him, not
I
just
just think the
not just
interesting
doing
thing is
linebacker
like
stuff.
what James Laurinaitis talked about, and now hearing Ryan Day, they both mentioned like the football IQ and how much he's learning, because coming out of high school, that was sort of the knock on Arvell. Like, we don't, like, he's an athlete, yeah, but can he pick up the game? And
It was still the knock even as
Last
recently
year.
as last year.
And so the fact that is clicking, like that light is fully on. And I think that people who have been longing for the days of the Ohio State linebackers to be like, you know,
Silver bullets.
terrorizers on the field, I think those moments are coming.
It's a pretty good group that they've got there. And it's Bill and I talked about that last week. It's pretty impressive what they can do, what they could do, what they should do, what they will do. It's fun to watch, but running out of time to do it. Only a week and a half left until the spring showcase. I'm sorry, the spring game at the Horseshoe. Get your tickets for that.
They made a whole big deal about calling it a showcase 3 weeks ago, and now every time Ryan Day talks, he's like, it's a game, it's a game, it's a game.
Come watch the
I
game.
wonder what ticket sales are.
And people are going to show up on that Saturday morning, and they're going to expect a game, and then it's going to be guys playing tic-tac-toe. Or
Extended forecast looks all right.
I know, but I would like to see them play Connect Four.
Oh,
Like a giant Connect Four.
giant connection.
We got to see them do that at the Rose Bowl. It wasn't as fun as you'd think.
No. But if you let them play with the crowd,
Huh.
like the crowd got to decide. Like you scream and tell them where to put it.
That's
It's an idea for sure.
$10 well spent.
Yeah,
Hey,
let's
NIL.
we'll
And
keep kicking that around. Anyway,
I was at Saddle Up last year. There was no Connect Four. Very disappointing.
I don't. If
There's
you came,
those, though.
if you came here expecting to play Connect Four with Chip Kelly, I'm sorry that it didn't work out.
I'm going
for
to be
you.
honest with you guys. I don't think I spoke to anybody in the last 4 days. And so right now, I'm just like constantly like, woo! My brain is in, its synapses firing all over the place.
I can tell. Welcome back.
Thanks.
You needed to recharge,
Man, I feel
rejuvenated,
good. Yeah.
and we're going to have a lot more to talk about with Berm throughout the week. Later on Tuesday, what do we have? We have BIA. We have corners and safeties, and Tim Walton and Matt Guerreri. Looking forward to be back in here. That's going to be practice number 9 for Ohio State, and another availability. We're going to have that on Thursday as well, and Student Appreciation Day on Saturday. So a lot of coverage.
Tell them
coming
what
in.
Thursday is.
It's the biggest day of the year.
It's offensive line
Bill
day.
Landis' Christmas. So I didn't want to get too ahead of it. We're going to just Thursday morning's podcast daily is just going to be Bill previewing that for 45 minutes by himself. Berm and I are just going to relax on Wednesday night.
Well, the previous 48 hours is going to be people talking about Devin Sanchez. So
Probably. So get ready for that. It's all coming your way on the podcast all week long as we get through into the officially past the midway point of spring camp for Ohio State. This has been some Tuesday takeaways on the podcast daily. He's Bill. That's Berm. I'm Austin. We'll see you later.